So what is happening? Well, essentially, Warner Brothers and New Line are preparing to do an anime version of a part of Lord of the Rings, which is set to be released in 2024, with some executive production work done by Philippa Boyens, who did the screenplay for the Lord of the Rings screenplays for Peter Jackson. And there is a bit of Weta involvement. There's also John Howe, who's a very renowned Tolkien illustrator. So in terms of the cast, it seems very impressive. It's going to be directed by Kenji, who's done Blade Runner. But it's a very curious thing. So what's this about? Well, it's going to be focused on Helm, who is basically a former king of Rohan. And we do know about this. This did actually happen. There was a war, but it's only alluded to in little bits and pieces. But if you did pay attention to Lord of the Rings in both the book and in the movie, to be fair, they do cite this and sort of how Helm is this kind of legendary king who's a very inspiring figure. Kind of a weird story to focus on. And I've already done a report on this that the rights situation with Warner Brothers is sort of weird. Technically, they shouldn't be able to do this, but apparently they are going ahead with it. Concept art has been released. This isn't even new. This has actually been in the works for a while. I guess now they finally have made the official announcement. And coincidentally with the Amazon Rings of Power. But those are completely separate. So this is going to be a Warner Brothers thing. It's a New Line thing. Peter Jackson on his Facebook apparently is approving of it. So it is sort of doing callbacks to the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, but it's going to be its own thing. It's set a couple of hundred years before the events of Lord of the Rings. Again, in terms of the main story, this is a very tiny part of it. It's not going to involve a lot of the fan favorites like the Nazgul or Gandalf or the Hobbits or Sauron in any direct way. And they say they're promising to stick to the text, but the texts themselves are very thin. I'd imagine they're going to have to invent quite a lot. If this is going to be a full feature film, they're going to have to make up some stuff, at least to fill in the gaps. A lot of people who don't like the Rings of Power, in terms of the Tolkien channels or some of the more general channels devoted to fantasy, are really supporting this. And now somehow, magically, despite saying forever and ever is only about the Middle Ages, only about European peoples, only about European mythology, now all of a sudden an anime version of a Lord of the Rings story are somehow compatible. So the same people telling us it's all about the Middle Ages and the Celtics are now saying his story is compatible with Japanese aesthetics and Japanese animation with a straight face. Yeah, I don't know about that. But again, to be fair, they are promising fidelity, whereas the Rings of Power, yes, you can legitimately criticize because have admitted this. They're going to be crunching the timeline and playing with the dates. But this anime feature will not. It will be trying to respect the timeline much more rigorously. But Philippa is not writing this. It's going to be written by her daughter. Talk about Hollywood corruption. But on paper, it sounds good. The concept art looks great. And Helm himself is a fascinating character, but I gotta say, this is a little bizarre because if my memory serves me correctly, he's described as a cannibal. He's pretty much a crazy, really erratic figure in the text. So, are they really going to stick to the text and have him eating people? I don't know. I mean, I would expect this is going to be PG-13. It's not going to be R-rated because they want to get the biggest audience possible. So, but anime is pretty hardcore. They often show extreme nudity and extreme amounts of violence. So where Kenji and Joseph and his collaborators are going to go, unclear. The only thing we have now is concept art. They haven't even announced the voice cast. That's probably going to happen soon enough. So I don't know. Again, unlike these other people, I'm being consistent. I'm open-minded to what the adaptations are. We're going to wait and see. But I predict at least half of these people who are now supporting this, as soon as they learn more information, are going to start screaming the same thing. Woke disaster, woke this, woke that, woke, woke, woke. And they're skipping over the major contradiction where suddenly, magically, Sweden and Japan are sister mythologies and they can just be blended easily. I don't know. But I am supporting this. It looks great. I'm not the biggest fan of the original film trilogy, but that took a lot of liberties with the canon. So hopefully Philippa will keep her promise and be a little bit more rigorous this time. Again, it is a tiny story, and they're going to have a whole film to explore it. So hopefully they don't have to cut any corners. But we'll wait and see how accurate and how well this is done and whether the voices are really going to match the figures and characters within the lore. We'll have to wait and see. But it looks good on so far. So it's a very promising start. But it is being done for money, and we shouldn't really hide it. This is a commercial project. Whether they really care or respect Tolkien, I don't know. And whether Tolkien himself would have approved of anime, of all things, that's extremely doubtful. So, but again, at least I'm being consistent that let's be open-minded in terms of how this is going to work with the lore. But